Every day, the same promise was broken, until one quiet moment revealed a hidden truth about the mind that changed everything and ended procrastination forever. The room was quiet, but not peaceful. A soft yellow light hung from the ceiling, spreading a weak glow across the walls. It was not bright enough to fill the space. Shadows stayed in the corners, silent and still, like they had been there for a long time. A desk stood near the window. It was not organized. Papers were scattered in uneven piles. Some were slightly bent, others half hanging off the edge. A closed notebook sat in the center, untouched. A pen rested beside it, placed there carefully at some point, but never used. The air felt heavy. A clock hung on the wall above the desk. Tick, tick, tick. Each second sounded louder than normal, almost like it was reminding someone of something they didn't want to hear. In the chair, someone sat still. Their posture was not straight. Shoulders slightly bent forward. Hands resting on the table, not moving. Their eyes were open, but they were not really looking at anything, just staring. The notebook had been there all day, maybe longer. That morning had felt different. The sunlight had entered the room early, warm and bright. It touched the desk, the notebook, even the chair. Everything had looked fresh. There had been energy then. A clear thought had formed. Today will be different. It felt real at that time. Strong, believable. A plan had been made. Small tasks. Simple steps. Nothing too big. Just start. That was the goal. But starting never happened. Instead, time moved. Slowly at first, then quickly. Morning turned into afternoon. Afternoon turned into evening. And now the light was fading. The room that once felt full of possibility now felt empty. A deep breath broke the silence. Then a quiet sigh followed. Inside, something felt tight. Not pain, but close to it. A mix of feelings that didn't sit well together. Guilt, frustration, disappointment, and something even deeper, something harder to explain. They leaned back slightly in the chair. The wood creaked under the small movement. Their eyes slowly closed. Thoughts began to move. Why does this keep happening? The question came softly, but it carried weight. It wasn't new. It had been asked before. Many times. But the answer never came. Because nothing about this felt simple. It didn't feel like laziness. That word didn't fit. Because the desire to do something was there. Very strong. Sometimes even painful. There were dreams. Clear ones. A better life. A version of themselves that felt in control. Someone who woke up early, worked without fear, finished tasks, and ended the day with quiet satisfaction. That version felt real in the mind, but far in reality. Every time they tried to move toward it, something stopped them, not outside, inside. A quiet voice, soft but powerful. Do it later. It didn't sound dangerous. It sounded harmless. Even comforting. And that was the problem. Because later never came with action. It only came with more delay. The hand slowly moved toward the pen. Fingers touched it, lifted it slightly, paused. Then, gently placed it back down. A small action. Almost nothing. But it felt heavy. Like something invisible had pushed the hand back. Outside the window, the sky had turned into a soft shade of blue. The sun was almost gone. A cool breeze moved the curtains slowly. The world outside was changing, moving forward. But inside the room, everything felt stuck. The same pattern had repeated for days, weeks, maybe even longer. Wake up with hope. Make a plan. Delay the start. Feel the pressure grow. Do nothing. Then feel bad. Promise to try again tomorrow. Repeat. Each cycle made something inside weaker. At first, it was just small doubts. Maybe I need more motivation. Then it changed. Maybe I just need rest. But over time, the thoughts became heavier. Maybe something is wrong with me. That thought stayed longer than the others. It didn't leave easily. It sat quietly in the mind, growing stronger each day. The hands rested on the desk again. Still, the notebook remained empty. The silence in the room felt louder now. Even the clock seemed stronger. Tick, tick. Time was moving, but nothing else was. A faint sound came from the phone lying on the table. A notification. The screen lit up. A small glow in the dim room. Then it faded, ignored. Even checking it felt like too much effort. That was the strange part. Doing nothing had become exhausting. The body felt tired even without movement. The mind felt full even without action. Minutes passed, or maybe more. It was hard to tell. Time didn't feel clear anymore. Another slow breath. Then another. The eyes shifted toward the window. Outside, lights were turning on in nearby homes. People were walking, talking, living their lives. Somewhere, someone was finishing their work. Somewhere, someone was starting something new. It all felt distant. Like watching life through glass. Close but unreachable. A quiet thought appeared. Tomorrow will be better. It had always been comforting before. But this time, it felt different, weaker, empty. Because it had been said too many times. The promise had lost its strength. The chair moved slightly as they stood up. Slowly. The body felt heavy. Not from work, but from the weight of not working. They walked toward the window. Each step soft, almost silent. The cool glass touched their hand. Outside, the air looked fresh, calm. For a moment, everything became still. No pressure, no noise, no expectations. Just silence. And in that silence, something small changed. A new question appeared. Not loud, not painful. Just quiet. What if the problem isn't me? The thought felt strange. Almost uncomfortable, because it challenged everything they had believed. But it didn't leave. It stayed, soft but steady. For the first time, the mind didn't reject it. Instead, it listened. The room was still the same. The desk was still messy. The notebook was still empty. Nothing outside had changed. But something inside had shifted. Very slightly, not fixed. Not solved, but different. And for the first time in a long time, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt open, like space. Space for something new, something possible, something that hadn't been tried before. And in that quiet moment, without pressure, without fear, a new beginning slowly started to take shape. The room had not changed. The same soft yellow light. The same quiet walls, the same desk still holding the untouched notebook. But something inside had shifted. They were still standing near the window, hand resting lightly against the cool glass. Outside, the night had fully arrived. Small lights glowed from distant homes, steady and calm. That question still lingered. What if the problem isn't me? It didn't come with pressure. It didn't demand an answer. It just stayed. Slowly they turned back toward the desk. The steps were quiet, almost careful, as if something fragile had entered the room. They sat down again. The chair made the same soft sound, but it felt different now. Not heavy, just present. Their eyes moved to the notebook. Still blank. For a moment the old feeling tried to return. That weight, that hesitation. But this time, they didn't fight it. They didn't force themselves to suddenly become focused or productive. Instead, they watched it. The feeling, it was there. A quiet resistance. A small voice saying, "Not now." Before, that voice had always won. But now, something new happened. They asked gently, "Why?" The question was simple, but the answer came slowly. Not in words at first, in feelings. A slight tightness in the chest, a small fear, a quiet discomfort. The task in front of them wasn't just a task. It carried something else. Expectation, uncertainty, the chance of doing it wrong. And suddenly it made sense. The mind wasn't trying to stop them. It was trying to protect them. From discomfort, from failure, from the unknown. They sat still, letting that idea settle. For so long they had thought, "I am the problem." But maybe the mind had just been doing its job, avoiding what felt uncomfortable, even if that avoidance created something worse later. A slow breath filled the room. Then something small happened. Not a big decision. Not a dramatic change. Just a quiet thought. What if I don't try to finish it? That felt strange, almost wrong, but also lighter. They picked up the pen again. This time, their hand didn't stop halfway. The tip of the pen touched the paper. And instead of thinking about the whole task, they focused on something smaller. Just one line. Nothing more. The first word came out slowly, a little uneven, but it was there. Written. Real. They paused. The world didn't change. Nothing dramatic happened, but something inside felt different. The resistance didn't disappear, but it weakened. Just a little. They wrote another word, then another. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't fast. But it was movement. For the first time in a long time. The clock continued ticking. But now, it didn't feel like pressure. It felt like rhythm. Time was moving. And so were they. Minutes passed. Not many, but enough. Enough to fill a small part of the page. They leaned back slightly and looked at what they had written. It wasn't impressive, but it wasn't empty. And that mattered. A quiet realization began to grow. The problem had never been starting. It had been the way they looked at starting. They had always waited to feel ready, to feel motivated, to feel confidence. But those feelings had never come first. They came after action, after movement, after doing something small. The mind didn't need a big change. It needed a different approach. Smaller steps. Less pressure. More understanding. They looked around the room again. It was still simple. Still quiet. But now, it didn't feel like a place of failure. It felt like a place of beginning. The notebook was still mostly blank, but not completely. And that small difference carried meaning. They stood up again, this time without the heavy feeling from before. Their body felt lighter, not because everything was solved, but because something had started. They walked toward the window once more. Outside, the night was calm. The same lights, the same quiet streets. But now, it didn't feel distant. It felt connected. A soft thought came, clearer than before. I don't need to change everything. Another breath. I just need to begin. That idea settled deeply. No pressure to be perfect. No need to suddenly become a different person. Just small steps. Again and again. They turned back to the desk. The pen was still there. The notebook waiting. But this time, it didn't feel like a challenge. It felt like an invitation. They sat down and wrote one more line. Then they stopped. Not because they couldn't continue, but because they didn't need to force more. That was new. Stopping without guilt. Starting without fear. The cycle had shifted. Not broken completely, but changed. And that was enough for now. The clock ticked softly in the background. But it no longer sounded like something was slipping away. It sounded like something was being built. 1 second at a time. They closed the notebook gently, not with disappointment, but with quiet satisfaction. A small smile appeared. Not wide, not loud, just real. For the first time in a long time, they trusted something inside themselves. Not motivation, not sudden energy, but the ability to begin, even when it felt uncomfortable, even when the mind resisted. Because now they understood. The mind wasn't the enemy. It just needed guidance and patience. They turned off the light. The room fell into darkness, but it didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt calm. As they walked away, a final thought stayed with them, soft but strong. Tomorrow doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs one small start. And maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything. Because change didn't come from waiting. It came from that first quiet step. The one that almost didn't happen. The one that changed everything. If this moment felt familiar, maybe it's not about doing more. Maybe it's about starting smaller. And if something inside you is still waiting, maybe all it needs is one line.